This video is going to be a guide, a step-by-step guide on how to get started with crafting at Lickstart. This may be a very long video, so I'm going to leave the summary of this video in the comment together with links to the trade searches that I'm going to recommend. This step-by-step guide will have crafts that tend to work pretty much every league. Obviously meta changes and the game changes from league to league, but in general this step-by-step process that I'm going to recommend and the items that I'm going to recommend you to craft are to a large extent going to work in upcoming leagues without any issues. Before I go into the actual guide, I want to make a few things clear. When it comes to profit crafting, sometimes it may be not suitable for you if you are not able to be at your computer for many hours to respond to trades. It's very easy with profit crafting to get lazy, because crafting it's not as fun as running maps. So although crafting in general is very profitable, you may not make much currency because you will just simply procrastinate a lot and you are not going to be productive. Another thing would be if you farm logbooks, for example, and you make 200 divines. Those 200 divines, almost all of them, you are going to be able to invest into your character. But with crafting it's different. For example, with crafting, if you make 600 divines, almost none of those divines can be used to upgrade your character. You are going to use them to continue crafting to make more currency. So it becomes this vicious cycle where you invest more currency to make more. So this is please be aware of this when attempting profit crafting. In this video I'm going to cover some hideout warrior methods you can use to make currency. But this video is not about hideout warrior strategies, it's only about crafting. But I'm going to touch about that upon that subject a little bit. So I have it written here, I will also post it in the comments. Step 1 would be to have a method to generate currencies. For example, I like to do logbooks. Step 2 would be to invest any extra currency you have into crafting. For example, if I'm doing logbooks, I know that if I have like 500 chaos, I can pretty much do logbooks infinitely. I can do them forever. So anything about 500 chaos, I will start to invest into crafting. And I would start with a very cheap craft. This is the link for that craft. Basically craft medium cluster jewels with projectiles increased damage, with eye-to-eye repeater, aerodynamics and streamlined. And you want to price them in such a way that you sell them fast. You want to have them the lowest on the market. You don't necessarily have to drive the price down. So for example, if they go for 60 chaos, what you can do, you can sell them for 59.99 or 59.98 or 97. So you don't necessarily have to drive the price down to break the market, because on the trade website they will appear as 60 chaos. Anyway, at Lickstart you do this craft with Orb of Bindings instead of alchemies, because alchemies are very expensive. So what you're doing here, this is an intermediate craft. You want to do it because it's more profitable than running logbooks, but it's not the end all be all. This is just an intermediate step. It's very inexpensive craft, and you want to invest pretty much everything you have extra. Anything you have above 500 kills, you want to invest into this craft. Now, step 3 would be to set aside some currency, and like for example, you set aside 5 to 10 divs, and with these 5 to 10 divines, you're going to buy a bunch of bases. These bases at Lickstart, for example, you can buy scepters with +1 with fracture to +1 to level 4 skill gems for 1 to 2 divines. and you can just sell them later, like 1 week later. Such bases will sell for like 10 to 15 divs. You don't have to craft the items that you're going to buy here. You can just resell them later. Although some of these items you can just buy them and just craft them later. For example, you can buy rare amulets with +1 to level 4 skill gems with 2 empty prefixes. From time to time you're going to buy a few of them for like 20 to 30 chaos, and they have 3 suffixes. And maybe 3 or 4 days later you can just craft them. So you can make a stock of these bases right here. Now these bases are going to be at the bottom. These are the bases, and I'm going to show you. So here's some of the bases that I'm talking about. This would be an amulet with damage over time multiplier and +1 to level of all skill gems. If you can manage to buy them for very cheap, just buy them, because there's a very high chance you make an amulet with +2 to all skill gems and damage over time multiplier, and this would sell for a lot. Another thing would be, for example, spell suppression boots. These are, from time to time you're going to buy such boots for 30 to 40 kills, because they will not have fracture spell suppression, and then you can just use a wild bristol matron and get movement speed and maximum life and sell them for like 3 to 4 divs. Now obviously at 2 divines this is not going to be great. You have to know the market to a certain extent, but these are things that you can buy. Another example would be these scepters right here with fracture +1 to level of all skill gems. It doesn't matter which base on a scepter, because all of them will basically all of them will rise in value regardless of the base. But at league start you get them for 1, 2, maybe 3 divs, and 1 week later they will be like 10, 15 divs, and you don't really have to craft them, because think about it like this. If you buy 10 scepters and you pay 2 divs per each scepter and you don't craft them at all, with 20 divines you can buy 10 scepters and then you can sell them for at least 10 divs each, so make like 8 divs profit. But if you were to craft them, you're going to block like another 10 to 15 divines crafting them. So this is why this is not ideal, because the profits will not be that great, and you can just instead of spending money trying to craft these, you can just buy the bases early on and just resell them for 5 or 10 times the price you bought them for. Another thing would be to buy amethyst rings with fractured attributes. For example, a fractured tier 1, these are all tier 2, but a ring like this at click start would be around 1 div, maybe even less than 1 divine, and 1 week later they will go for like 3 divines the base. You can buy bases for Spectral Shield Throw, for example, if Spectral Shield Throw is going to be played. I have a video on how to craft jewels for this specific jewels, but if Spectral Shield Throw is not going to be played, you can buy the bases with bows, and they go from level 50 to 67, and at league start you can buy them for like 5 to 10 chaos, maybe 2 chaos, and then you can see that these bases go for 1 div, 2 divs later on. Or you can just craft the jewels yourself and sell them. You can buy, for example, this league Hex Blast Mines was a thing, and both these fractures +1 to level of all spell skill gems or increased spell damage above 100 were very expensive. You're looking at about 15 divs each for the base. Obviously you have to buy them on a good implicit increased spell damage, because ones are different. And these are going to be amulets. Now for amulets, you have to watch the video to understand what bases to buy, but basically you would want 2 open prefixes, or 1 open prefix and 1 crafted prefix, and 3 suffixes like this. And even if you pay like 1 div for such an amulet, it's okay, because you don't have to pay the cost of 1 div from the benchcraft to make it a +2, and it's also more ideal that it has 2 empty prefixes. So if you can buy them for like 40 kills, 80 kills, 100 kills, just make a stock of such bases. Again, there are many more things you can buy, but these are just some examples. I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. These are usually the good items that you can buy, at least the crafting bases you can buy. Maybe you can look into fractures with +2 bowfire, 2 additional arrows or something like that, but in general these are the good things you can buy. Now, other crafting materials that you can buy, so not bases, but crafting materials, would be wild bristol matrons, tailoring, tempering orbs, regrading lenses, catalyst, for example, fertile catalyst, you can buy a bunch at Rixar because they're like 2 kills. Then they go up for 6 to 7. You can buy secret crystallized life force if you get it for like 40 kills. They tend to go up in price quickly. Or just harvest juice in general. There are other things, for example, Tragic Chimerals or Vivid Vultures. But in general, these are the good things you can buy. Or, as I said here, Righteous Fire Helmets. To elevate, I have a video on that. You can do it with Spark Gloves, a bunch of different things. Maybe you want to read this whole thing. So step 3 would be, when you make some currency, what you're going to do with that currency would be to progress to a better craft. A better craft would be the Chaos Rings. Again, this is video to the craft explained. This craft is very good at League Start because the items sell quite fast. In about 2 or 3 days you're going to sell all the rings most of the time. It's not that expensive considering that at League Start life force is very cheap. You're looking at about 8 divs, maybe 7, maybe 10 divs, depending on how expensive yellow life force is, expenses per hour, and the profit usually is around 15 to 25, maybe 30 divs per hour profit with this craft. But there are some issues with this craft. You're not going to be able to do it for like 10 hours a day. At some point you're going to not have enough bases on the market. But ideally you would do this, you would do this craft and a combination of running logbooks and this craft at step 2, and also invest currency into buying these bases. And when Stygian Vices appear on the market, appear on in bulk on TFT, and depending on how expensive essences are, you can start crafting Stygian Vices. If, for example, deafening essences of Envy are going to be too expensive, then probably this craft is going to be dead. But if they are like 27 to 30 deafening essences of Envy for 1 divine, this craft is going to be very good, and most of your currency is going to come from this craft. You're going to basically stay and craft these Stygian Vices for days. It's not a bad craft. I just tested it for 12 hours. I crafted and I made 400 divines in about 4 or 5 days after crafting those Stygian Vices. So it's insane. It's insane profit. Now, this Stygian Vice craft, may not work for everybody. For example, you may not have enough stashes. If that's the case, then I would suggest you to stick with the craft mentioned at step 4. Or if you, for example, if you can stay at your computer but not play the game, but you can respond to the trades, I think you're better off crafting the +2 amulets, because +2 amulets tend to sell very fast, but they are quite expensive. So if you can only play for like 1 or 2 hours per day, then you can just craft a few +2 amulets, and if you can respond to the trades, then you can sell those amulets, make huge profits, and then repeat the craft. So here I have some numbers. Now keep in mind, the profits and the expenses are going to be different depending from league to league. Last time I tested them, this is what the average prices were. So for 1 full hour of just crafting amulets, this does not include the time it takes you to sell these amulets, but if you're crafting and you're sitting in your hideout, it doesn't take too long to do such a trade, because you're anyway in your hideout crafting. If you're running maps, then yeah, it's going to take more time because you have to go back from your map, and it takes longer. So to craft +2 amulets, in general it costs you somewhere in the range of 80 to 90 divines, and the profits that you can expect are going to be around 50-60 divs per hour. Stygian Vices cost you on average 25 divines, and the profits are somewhere in the range of 25-40 divs, usually 30 divs per 1 hour of crafting Stygian Vices. Now, as I said, Stygian Vices is the best craft you can do because it works every league. You're not going to saturate the market for Stygian Vices, and it's hella profitable. Another craft that you can try, but this you have to do the math. It's not always profitable. Sometimes it's very profitable, sometimes it's not profitable, and would be to craft omniscience rings. What you can expect with this craft, as I said, on average, to spend about 60 divines crafting the rings, and the profit should be around 40 divines per hour. But do the math you are going to craft. Usually it's better to craft omniscience rings with triple tier 2 than to craft omniscience rings with triple tier 1, because the essences are going to be cheaper. It's much easier to hit triple tier 2 than it is to hit triple tier 1, and also the bases are going to be much cheaper. Here, to craft rings with fractured life and chaos resistance, so the one that I mentioned here at step 4, as I said, on average 8 divs, especially in day 1 and 2 when life force is very cheap, and these are the profits. Obviously it's going to depend, because sometimes you're going to get lucky and craft very good rings that can sell for like 8 to 9 divs, but in general these are the profits that you can expect. And this is good because it's very cheap, as I said, 8 divs per hour, 8 to 10 divs per hour expenses, and it doesn't occupy too much inventory. Whereas with Stygian Vices, if you do it for 10 hours, you're going to fill a few stashes, right? And here at step 6, I have, so when you have lots of currency that you don't need, for example, if you have 300 divines and you craft Stygian Vices for 10 hours a day, then those 300 divines cannot be invested into expensive crafts, because you want to keep crafting Stygian Vices, right? Obviously in that time you're going to sell some pelts, but in general. But when you have so much currency that it doesn't matter how many hours you're crafting Stygian Vices, because you're always going to have a significant surplus, what you can do, you can look into crafts that tend to be more expensive, but also the profits per hour are going to be greater. Again, the crafts that I would recommend, and I also have videos for, are going to be the Righteous Fire amulets. Now, if Righteous Fire is dead next league, in general, +2 amulets for whatever build is going to be meta, it's going to work. +2 amulets will work every league because everybody buys them. It's a significant DPS boost and everybody buys them. And here's a video on how to craft them. And the omniscience rings again. Why? Because these sell fast. They are not necessarily the best crafts, but I have videos about them, and they sell fast and tend to work pretty much every league. Another craft that tends to work every league, it's going to be Fugitive Boots. These usually sell within 1 day. It's best if you go for the elevated onslaught, elevated tailwind. Now, I don't have a video for crafting these boots, but the way you do it, it's written here. Basically, you want to grab a pair of boots, fugitive boots above level 80, without any fracture or influence on them. Or if it has influence, it needs to be redeemed or nothing else. And another pair of boots with tailwind. If it only has tailwind and you need a second influence mod with tailwind, the way you obtain it is by exalting, or just having full suffixes, one empty prefix, and craft suffixes can be changed, and then reforge chaos. And basically this is that's your pair of boots that you can use to awaken, to elevate. And then if you to elevate tier 1 to elevate onslaught, what you would do on the boots of fugitive boots, ideally with a labyrinth enchant of increased attack speed, cat speed, you apply Redeemer's Exalted Orb, and then you would reforge physical from harvest until you hit tier 1 onslaught. So let me show you.
When I'm ready and not. Oh.
You'd reforge this. Usually it takes you 80 tries, which at least that would be half of a divine, to get tier 1 onslaught. And then it's a 50-50 to elevate it. And then you just use Awakener Orb. If you have an empty suffix, you are going to use suffixes can be changed Reforge Lightning, because that will guarantee lightning resistance. You cannot guarantee chaos resistance, unfortunately. And what you would do then, you would lock suffixes again with Wild Bristol Matron, Reforge Crit, and ideally you would only want elusive. Then you craft suffixes can be changed again, and then you use H-Link. At least start H-Link is like 30, 40, 50 chaos. So this is very cheap to do at least start, but I would not necessarily recommend, because crafting such a pair of boots will take you at least like 10 to 15 divs, even at least start. So I would not attempt it this craft in the first few days. But even if you do it like 4 or 5 days into the league, you're only going to pay like 1 div for the H-Link, so it's still a good craft. Obviously you have to do the math, and after you unveil, after you hit the right veil, after you apply H-Link, craft maximum mana, unveil movement speed guaranteed, and then craft life. And here are some occasional crafts that you can do. I have a video on how to craft very expensive amulets. Again, amulets such as +2 fire with damage over time multiplier and fire damage over time multiplier, which can sell for hundreds of divines. These are crafts that you can only do for a few. You're only going to craft a few items, but they are very expensive, and at the same time they are very profitable. But you're going to be limited by how many of these you can craft, either because they're going to be either too expensive, or there are not going to be enough bases on the market. You can do the Righteous Fire helmets. Here for the Righteous Fire helmets, best suffixes are going to be if you can get it with life regeneration rate or chaos resistance. These are usually the best ones. You don't actually need tier 1 or tier 2 regeneration rate for if you have life regeneration rate. If you get it even with tier 3 life regeneration rate, it's going to sell for a lot. And then it's going to be the Spark Cloves. And the Spark Cloves, what I mean by that, it's not the crafting video that I have on how to craft Spark Cloves. It's going to be a trade search. So from time to time you're going to buy Spark Cloves that have all these modifiers and they are not corrupted, and they have like tier 16 faster casting, 30 crit multi, which is the lowest tier, and they will sell for like 30 to 40 divs. And you just buy them, you make them corrupted through the bestiary with Krejcik Vassal.
When I'm ready and not before.
So you corrupt it like this to have 30% quality, like this guy did, and then you would apply Tainted Divine Teardrop. Now at least start they will be less than 1 div, and you spend like 5 to 10 divines to make a pair of gloves that has 70 crit multi, level 20 faster casting, and such a pair of gloves will sell for like 80 divines, 75, 90, 140, depends on if you get it with perfect rolls, perfect tires, you can sell it for like 140, 150. But in general, for like 5 to 10 minutes of work and 50 to 60 divines invested, you're going to make like 20 to 30 divines profit usually. Now here I have a few extra crafts that you can do. These are not necessarily crafts that I would recommend. They are very profitable. You're looking at about 40 to 50, maybe 60 divines profit per hour with these crafts, but they tend to sell very slow. For example, you can craft suppression boots with a fracture of 13% only, because these tend to be very cheap, like 70, 60 chaos instead of the 40%, which is going to be 1 or 1.5 divs. And you can just spam a few essences of envy, hit a good suffix, and reforge Veld Chaos Orb, Wild Beast Matron, Veld Chaos Orb, block mana, unveil movement speed, and craft life. And such a pair of boots will sell for like 4 divs, 3.5, 4 divs, and it would only cost you like 1.5, around 2 divines. So the profit margins are very good with this craft, but again, they will tend to sell slow. You're not going to sell these boots in one day. You're going to sell them in 1 week or more than 1 week. But the same goes with Righteous Fire gloves. These Righteous Fire gloves tend to be around 40 to 50 divines profit per hour, but it's, again, they're going to be very expensive. You're looking at about 40-50 divines invested in 1 hour, and they will sell in like 1 week. If you want to diversify and try these crafts, you can do it, but again, they sell very slow. So this is one of the issues. You can do the same thing with Tailwind boots. Exactly what I explained at the Fugitive Fugitive Boots craft. You buy boots with Tailwind, or you can just roll it with Ack and Scour. And then if they have 3 full suffixes and 1 empty prefix, you Wild Beast Matron reforge Chaos from Harvest, and you get a pair of boots with Tailwind and another influence mode, and that can sell for like 3-4 divs, because people are trying to elevate the Tailwind. Another craft that you can do, in general it works pretty much every league, is going to be crafting weapons. Crafting weapons, it depends from build to build. It depends at what point into the league you're crafting them. For example, a Righteous Fire helmet, Righteous Fire scepter, if you craft it in the first 1 to 2 or 3 days, it's going to sell for like 10 to 11 divines. But if you craft it 1 week later, it will be like 20 to 25 divines, just because the base is very expensive. Now, if I'm not going to go over what weapons to craft. In general, crafting weapons is very good because they sell fast. But if you don't want to craft the weapons, just at least have the bases, buy the bases, and then you can resell them later. Again, I said it in the beginning of the video. You can buy a Righteous Fire helmet fractured for 1 or 2 divines, maybe even 3, and then like 1 week later you can sell it for 5, 11, 12 divines. So you can just flip these bases, because they have huge profit margins, and the investment is not that big. Another thing you can do to make currency at league start would be to flip alternate quality gems, or to level the awakened gems with the Wild Brambleback. Now, this is a hit or miss, because many people are doing this. It's very simple, and the items are quite liquid. They sell very fast. So you kind of have to use PoE Ninja and PoE DB and constantly check at the profit margins and make sure that what you're doing is actually profitable. In general, to flip alternate quality with secondary regrading lens for support gems is going to be Inspiration and Elemental Damage Penetration and Cast on Damage Taken. These are usually the ones that tend to be profitable for the majority of the time, but not always. You have to constantly check the PoE Ninja and PoE DB. and also the trade website to check the prices for such gems. There are many more. Usually the way you make currency with this type of strategy is by tapping into a new market where there's very little to no competition, and you just milk it. This is basically how you do it with this type of gems. You can also do 2-level awakened gems, but I don't necessarily recommend this to you, because although you're looking at about 1 to 2, maybe 3 times profit for like 5 minutes of work, you're going to invest a lot of currency. So for example, if you want to level Unleash, let's just say you buy it for 6 divines, you make it level 5 and sell it for 9. That's okay. You probably spend like 0.5, 0.7 divs on the Wild Brambleback and Yellow Beast, but it's going to take you a few hours to make that sale, and you're basically blocking 6 divines. So this is why I don't necessarily recommend these strategies here, but they can work, especially if you just tap into a market where there's little to no competition.